Alright guys, so we're back here with another hand against an opponent that goes by the name of PBOGZ. Once again, when I played this guy, I had no notes on this guy, not really any reads. The only thing that I did notice pretty early on was that he was calling very, very wide out of position. So I ended up switching to a min-raise to a 2.5x, and ended up seeing him start to fold out a lot of his hands. So I felt that that was kind of a comfortable spot for me. And once again, you always want to be adjusting to your opponent's tendencies out of position pre-flop. If he's calling a ton out of position, you obviously want to be making it 3x or 2.5, obviously, if he decides to fold with 2.5. And also, if he is folding a lot out of position, you can just stick to a min raise. No need to make it anything more than a min raise if he's folding a lot. If you're not adjusting to villain's tendencies out of position pre-flop, that is a leak, so it's something you always want to keep an eye on. So this hand is an interesting hand. Remember, once again, I have no reads on this guy, but very early in the game, effective stacks are still basically 75 big blinds, and we end up picking up ace-queen. So right here, as I said before, I noticed that he was calling pretty wide out of position, so I ended up moving to a 2.5 raise, which seemed to work for me pretty well. He ends up flatting here with queen 8, which I think is fine because it's a circumstance and a situational thing where I'm usually opening pretty wide in position. So if your opponent is opening pretty wide out of position, with these effective stacks, queen 8 is a pretty standard call here, even like queen 7 too. But once again, that's to like either a min raise or sometimes a 2.5 raise to a 3x. It gets a little more tighter. It's close, and also definitely depends on how much your opponent is opening. Alright, so we have ace queen here and he flat calls, and we end up flatting a really, really, really big hand. And I've been going over some of these situational hands with a few poker players that I talked to. And this is a situation where you can do one of three things. A lot of players think that, okay, I'll make the regular sized, continuation bet, which is fine, I think, sometimes. Other players say, well, the board is so wet that I could bet more. And in a situation like that, you could extract more value because no matter what, he's basically calling at least a continuation bet. But I think in this circumstance, when you hit such a good hand, and once again, you have to remember that when you're playing somebody new, or if you're playing somebody who you don't think is that good, they're not really paying attention to your bet size, and they don't really have any reads on you. So this is a situation where I think that betting smaller here, betting smaller than half pot, can induce more floats, and also can induce some aggression where they say, oh, that's a small bet, that looks like a weakness bet, so let me re-raise it. But I think in most circumstances, more than not, it's going to induce some floats. And on a board like this, when I flop such a monster hand and I have like a queen of diamonds blocker, I think that I want either players to obviously float, or kind of like just call off and try to catch up, because obviously I'm holding the nuts right now and I don't want them to fold. So in this circumstance, I basically made it 40. Now, it's a little less than a bet that probably would have been like 50 if I wanted to do half pot, but a lot of people make it 60 sometimes too. But in this case, I made it smaller because I want him to continue on with this hand. I do not want this guy to fold. So in this circumstance, he had queen 8 here. So obviously, he's probably going to peel off here. But if I made it like something like a pot bet here, he could very easily fold this draw. Some players that are a little loose will obviously call, but good players will be like, okay, well, if I call here, I'm probably not going to get paid off that much because the straight is so obvious. So for 9 hits or an ace hits here, if I have like a king X or some kind of jack X, I'm probably pretty much going to shut down my action. So most good players will probably fold if they're not getting the right price. So right here is a situation where he flat calls, which I like, and the turn becomes a super blank card. Now this card just doesn't do anything, doesn't change board texture. Maybe on a long shot he hits some kind of like 10-6 jack 6 hand, but that's not going to happen a lot of the time. But this is a situation where he checks back, And I don't like my play here. I think that I bet too much here because a lot of players, definitely players who are holding this Queen X here, are definitely folding on this size bet. I think that for some players, this would be like, oh, it looks very strong, and other players, it would be like, oh, it looks very weak because he's just trying to push me off the hand. Um, but that's obviously based on your villain's tendencies. But this is a situation where I'm kind of contradicting what I did on the flop because I'm betting so big here that I'm folding out all the hands that I want to float or I want to catch up. So I think this is a bad raise on my side. I think that I should have made it no bigger than like 100. I think even 120 is maybe a little bit too big, but I want this guy to continue, so I think my bet should have been like 100, to be honest with you. And I don't know, 80 is a little bit too small. I think, yeah, I think 100 is probably the best bet here. Fortunately, I get lucky, and opponent decides to flat call here. Now, I don't like this flat call here because he just really, like, back to things I was talking about. Not only is he, he has a, what, 8 outs here. And like 11 if he thinks his queen is good, but more times than not it's not. But it's a situation where even if the river does come here, he's not going to get paid off more times than not because it's so obvious that, he hit the river. Now, for some aggressive players, they might use that to bluff, a certain hand. But once again, that's a good reason why I should be betting this much. So right here, I bet 140, as I said before, he flat calls, and the river becomes a 9. So this is kind of why you bet small. You bet small, you want him to catch up, and on the river he finally does catch up. Now, what I mentioned before was not only is this a card where it's great for me because not only does this make it very easy to get all our stacks in if he is holding the queen, which he is, but also this 9 card is a very, very good bluff card versus players who are aggressive. Like, somebody who may be called with like a weird float, or somebody who, just are trying to turn some kind of showdown hand like a 10 into a bluff because they don't feel they're good there. This is a great card to do that with. Because if I don't have a queen here, I have to think about if you're bluffing or not, and it's kind of a risky call with, like, let's say a king X or a jack X. So right here, he decides to take the initiative and bet pretty much a decent sized bet into this pot. And right off the bat, I'm thinking that he either has a queen or he has pure air. But in the situation, obviously, if he has pure air, he's folding anyways, and I'm not going to get much out of him. And if he has a queen, we're getting it all in. So I think the best bet here is just to shove and basically, get your stacks in, because I don't think he's doing this with some kind of value hand that he's going to, like, he's not doing this with a jack X where he's going to, call my river, click back. So if he makes it like 320, if I make it like 640, I don't think he's going to be calling here with like a jack X or a 10X or something like that. And I think he would have played a king X way differently. So this is a situation where it's all in or nothing. I decide just to shove all in, and he flat calls, and bingo, he had the queen and we had the nut straight. So that's a situation where you want to sometimes bet smaller to induce floats and basically let other hands catch up. Once again, I didn't like my turn bet. I thought it was a little bit too big, because we do want our opponent to continue on with the hand. But other than that, I thought the hand was played out pretty well, and we obviously won the game. So those are the 2 hands, and hope you enjoyed them, hope you learned from them, and you will hear back from me soon. So take care, guys.